Hello and welcome to the Author Interrogations. I'm BOOKSTROVERT from BOOKSTROVERT Reviews, and today I am interviewing the fabulous author of the fantastic MG novel Team Canteen, Amalie Jahn. Hi, Amalia. How are you today?
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, actually. I'm so excited to interview you.
I'm excited to be interviewed. I think this is my first official interview about Team Canteen. So you win.
I feel very lucky. So yeah, let's jump into our first question. I always start off with like a simpler question. Well, it seems like a simpler question. Really, it's probably the hardest question. What is your favorite book other than your own? The reason I say it's hard is because there are so many books and it's kind of hard to choose.
Hard to choose. Wow. So, I mean, probably if I'm thinking about when I was a kid and the type of books and the books that made me into a lifelong reader and writer, I'm thinking about one of my favorites was Bridge to Terabithia. I remember reading that in my sixth grade reading class. It was an assignment that we read that book. And that was the first book that I ever read that I remember making me cry, that I connected to the characters and the story so deeply that I I had an emotional response to it. And I remember thinking to myself how magical that was, that these words on this page could elicit such a powerful emotional response for me when I didn't actually do anything, but experience this other person's life, imaginary life through this book. And so I would say to this day, it's probably still one of my favorites simply because it was the book that showed me how powerful the written word can be.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that it's so important for kids to read and also not to discourage kids from reading certain books because all different books they evoke different types of emotions that are important to feel. Feeling different emotions. I feel like I'm talking about Inside Out right now. When you're feeling all these different emotions, it's such a surreal experience. And especially it's surreal when you're just feeling these emotions from reading words on a page.
I agree. And also the experience that the human experience of being able to have more than one emotion at the same
Yeah.
time. That's sort of an interesting time in your life when you realize that you can be sad and happy at the same time about the same thing. Yeah,
Reading can just teach you so many different things. It's pretty incredible.
it is. It's magic.
Yeah. Jumping right into Team Canteen. So, Team Canteen is a story about four friends from summer camp who happen upon a magic boa. This hot pink boa seems to have the power of good luck. Throughout the school year, they take turns passing around the boa as they each face their own challenges surrounding identity and really just growing up. It's a sisterhood of traveling pants for a new generation, and personally, I just love it. So, my first question for you, Amalia, is how did you come up with the idea? And specifically, how did you decide that the object they would pass around would be a hot pink boa?
That's a great question. I remember specifically, I have an amazing agent. Her name is Anne Rose. And I always, um, she's, she's really great at bouncing ideas and brainstorming. And we had gotten on a call together and done some brainstorming. I just finished a YA that was going out on submission. And I'd been tossing around the idea of writing a middle grade book. And she was very positive. I should go for it. Um, that she thought my voice was, I could do a middle grade book justice. And she said, you know, what would be really fun would be to do something like the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, only for middle grade. And immediately my brain just started going into overdrive of sort of turning some things from that series on its head and making it middle grade, because it's a different set of issues when you're in middle school versus high school. And the hot pink feather boa, I wanted it to be something fun, but also something that a pair of jeans, like in Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, that's sort of easy. And if you're seen with a pair of jeans walking around, no one is going to give you a second look. But if you're walking around with a hot pink feather boa, people are going to notice. And so I wanted the magical thing to be something that they would have to be okay with being a little bit different or a little bit unique in order to be brave enough to use the power of the ice. So what's cooler than a hot pink feather boa?
Nothing.
No.
Did your middle school experiences influence any of the characters' journeys?
All of them. I think any author that you have an opportunity to talk to on this podcast or otherwise, if they tell you that everything they make up for their characters is completely devoid of their own experience, they're absolutely lying to you. There's a little bit of Amalia in all four of these characters. So Claire, for instance, she's dealing with a situation where her family doesn't have a lot. And that's how I was growing up. My dad was a high school teacher. My mom stayed at home with my sister and I, and we didn't have a lot. We always had a roof and food and clothes, but we didn't have the best of everything. We had what was necessary. And so I think that middle school is one of those times when suddenly what you wear and who you are on the outside becomes super important.
Yeah.
Because you want to fit in. And I never did. I could never fit in. I never had the right anything. So I took that part for Claire. Claire also has struggles with her relationship with her dad. I did not. My dad's a really great guy, so I made that part up. And then, so for like Bailey and Raylyn, you know, that sister dynamic. I do have a sister, and I think in sisters, I wrote a whole book about sisters with A Walk Between Raindrops. I think the dynamic between two sisters is really fun to write about. And so there's a little bit of the sister dynamic that I experienced growing up, especially in middle school, in their relationship with Billy. The fact that he has this thing he's really passionate about, but he's afraid to be who he is. I feel like that sort of resonates with a lot of middle school kids, because there's a very strict protocol of who you're supposed to be and what you're supposed to do. And if you fall outside of that very set of strict parameters, you're other. And so I think that was always how I was, the things that I wanted to do. And we're never quite the cool thing that the most popular kids were doing. And then Tasha, Tasha with her dog obsession and having an experience where she just has this new family member that she's got to figure out how to navigate. I think that just sort of speaks to that middle school is a time when a lot of big changes happen in all parts of your life, and that it's all about figuring out how to approach those changes with sort of grace and an open mind.
Yeah. When you were talking about Billy and really all the characters in general, and even the hot pink boa being so unique and kind of being outside of what is cool, quote unquote, or quote unquote normal. I thought that you writing about these things is such a strong has such a strong significance because when kids are going to be reading through these characters, they can like pick and choose the little parts of them that resonate with the characters and the parts of them that people think aren't so cool that really are incredible and the best parts about them. And specifically with Billy, with him having to kind of fit into this hockey, strong, masculine thing, and then wanting to do figure skating, which is like the complete opposite of hockey. I thought that was just pretty incredible. It's like that High School Musical song, the stick to the status quo, where like
Right.
all the cool kids really are different. Everyone has their own unique thing, and that's what makes
Yes.
it cool.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was going to say. The big lie of all of it is that even those kids at the top of the proverbial food chain, the most popular, the most wealthy, the kids that have all of the things, those kids still have the exact same insecurities. They're still, there's always something, someone who has more, someone who is smarter, someone who is prettier. There's always a rung up, one more rung. And so the reality is that the insecurities that you are feeling, everyone else is feeling them too. They may or may not be have the courage to say it out loud. And I hope that this book gives kids the courage, no matter where you fall on that sort of kid hierarchy, to have the courage to say, like, yeah, these are the things I'm struggling with, and it's okay, and we can figure it out together.
Yeah. If everyone just said what they were feeling, we'd have a much easier time in the world.
Much easier time. Yep.
Jumping into the writing process aspect, how did you go about planning the four-person POV and what would happen when? Did you figure out the arc of each POV character separately and then puzzle piece them together, or how did that all come together?
Wow, that's a really great question. In my very early years of being an author, I was a very big pantser, meaning I just would write by the seat of my pants. I would have an idea and I would go with it, and I would let my main character sort of drive the plot and drive. And I love writing that way because as an author, when things are sort of scripted, it takes the fun out of it a little bit. If I don't know what I'm going to do next, I love writing that way. But unfortunately, when you have deadlines and people with expectations, it's really hard to do that. And especially with a book like this, where there are so many plot points that need to come together. Hold on real quick. I'll show you something. So I only knew where this was because I just cleaned up my office. I had all of these like sort of Post-its, and I had each month, and then I would have like each character was a different color, and then these were all over my dining room table. They spilled off onto the floor. If I'd already had an idea for the chapter, maybe it would get a star, or I don't know what this orange thing was about. And so I would have to have a big mess of all of these plot points, and then things wouldn't make sense and I'd have to rearrange them. So I have stacks and stacks of these with all of these moving parts for these characters. So yes, and there was a lot more planning on this book, simply because it was 4 POVs, and I wanted to make sure that everybody got their fair share of what was going on, and make sure that everyone each chapter was equal, that everyone, I didn't spend 15 chapters on Billy and poor Claire only got 3. I needed to make sure that everybody's story was addressed well. Earlier versions, there were less chapters, and then my agent and editor were both like, we need to beef these up. So then I had to somehow sneak more things in. But if Billy got another chapter, well, then Claire needed another chapter, and Raylene certainly needed another chapter. So I need to beef it all up. So it was a process. It took a long time.
I would only imagine so. I know that, well, thank you. That was such an amazing answer. Thank you for that answer. That was great. Um, I know that you have written a few books before this. What do you feel is the difference writing from a debut author's perspective versus a seasoned author?
Wow. I think the biggest thing is that I, a lot of people at this point, after all these years, have read my work. I've, a lot of people have reviewed my work, and have had opinions about my stories. And I have very thick skin after all these years. I can read reviews and take the parts that speak to me out and leave the rest. In the beginning, it's very, very hard to put your whole heart out there on the page for the whole world to read, and to understand that even though it's perfect in your eyes and your editor's eyes and your agent's eyes and the people at the publishing house's eyes, everybody loves it. There are definitely going to be people who absolutely think it's the biggest garbage pile that they've ever read in their entire lives. And there are going to definitely be readers who will read Team Canteen and they will absolutely hate it. And I'm okay with that. A decade ago, it would have just hurt deep, deep in my soul. And now I know that it's okay. And I'm not writing for everyone. I'm writing for the kids that this book speaks to them in a powerful, positive way.
That's pretty incredible to have. You've kind of gone in your own character journey, I could say, of
Yeah.
going from just like reading all these reviews and being hurt by them, and then by just going, oh, wait, that's somebody else's voice. It's not actually me.
Right. Right. And it's hard, I think, when you put so much of yourself into something, you want desperately for other people to love it as much as you do. And I know that there will be readers who will. I hope there's more who will love it than don't love it. But I don't get upset anymore. And I'm grateful for the readers who take the time to read it, whether they like it or not. I'm grateful that they take, because time is the one thing you don't have any more of. And if you take the time to spend with my book and my characters, that really means a lot to me. And I don't take that lightly. So that's what I would say.
Well, thank you. As a seasoned author, do you have any advice for debut authors, how to maybe not let that criticism affect you?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, don't read them. Like, don't, if you can find a really trusted friend who will go on to Goodreads or another review site and just pick out the most beautiful reviews that people write, the really glowing ones, and send those to you, so that you don't have to wade through all of the hard stuff. That's a really great idea. There's no reason to subject yourself to negativity, especially because these are all reader spaces. They're not writer spaces. These are places for readers to share their ideas, and they're not technically for you, although as I said before, I do take creative criticism very well, especially in those early years when there were truly good suggestions that readers were making about how I could improve my craft. And I have tried over the years to take the ideas that good readers have and 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 improve my writing. But I would say to recognize that every book isn't for every reader,
Yeah.
and um, your the biggest hope is that your book finds its readers, and do what you can to make sure it does. And if it doesn't, you did what you could do, and it's okay.
Yeah. I think that even transcends into kind of what we were talking about before about even like a middle grader's journey to finding out that what they love that maybe other people don't love is okay to love. You can put something out there and not everyone will love it, and that's okay because you love it, and that's
Right,
what matters.
right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. As long as it's you know as long as it's not problematic or
Yeah,
harmful to someone.
yeah,
Obviously, that's a different scenario. But as long as the book itself is something that is positive and helpful, the rest you can let go.
since you have written multiple books before Team Canteen, is there a through line of a specific topic that you enjoy writing about?
I don't know that I enjoy writing about it, but I can't seem to not write about it. Trauma. I just write about a lot of trauma. Um, all of my books, it's a kid trying to deal with grief or death or loss or struggling with some sort of trauma. I I guess I like it because I keep doing it. I think I do it. Well, I know I do it because I work through a lot of my own childhood stuff that I spent a lot of time trying not to think about. And so I use my writing, I always have, as a way to work through things. And um, and so yeah, I deal with a lot of trauma, but because I write for kids, there's always hope at the end.
Yeah.
Um, and it's one of the reasons I've never written for adults, because a lot of times adult books don't always end happy or hopeful, but kids books do,
Yeah.
because y'all aren't quite so jaded and um, uh, you still have hope for the world. And so I want to also have hope for the world, even though some days it's hard. So yeah, I guess I write about trauma a lot. All of them have trauma.
This is something that I talked about with Janet Sumner Johnson, who I also
Mm-hmm.
interviewed. There's in middle grade, one of the reasons I love it is there's always a little morsel of hope. And it's just you keep reading because you know that there is that little like light at the end of the road, or like the door might be closed, but there's a window. There's always that little bit of hope left.
That's so true. That's so true. And I think that's what makes writing for young people as a grown up really special, is to help keep that hope alive, not only for us, but for you all too. So
Yeah.
I love that. I think there's a lot of us in that space that's why we do what we do.
Yeah. That's that's pretty incredible. Thank you guys, everyone who writes middle grade, for doing what you do because it helps a lot of kids.
I think it helps a lot of adults too. There's some conversation recently online about helping middle grade books stay on shelves, because a lot of major retailers aren't carrying them on shelves anymore. Young people are spending a lot more time online, a lot less time with books, and and having adults help, if adults will, not that the books are for adults, but that the adults will read these books and find the joy in them and pass them down to who they belong to. I think that's how we can hopefully continue to move forward with middle grade books.
I think it's so important. There's middle grade, in my opinion, is not just for middle graders. It spans so many different ages. Like high schoolers could be reading middle grade books. There's not a lot of, there isn't a genre for high schoolers. There isn't a genre for like a few in between ages. And I think middle grade just really spans everything. There is YA, but YA I find is more, it's truly what's in the title. It's young adult, and teens are not young adults. Young 20-year-olds are young adults. And that's what I think is so great about middle grade, and also why it should stay on the shelves, is it not only helps these three pivotal grades, but it helps so many different people as well.
Agreed. And also, if you are 13 or 15 or 18 or 25 or 45, you were 12 years old once.
Yeah.
And so all of those people were 12 once. And so you can remember what it was like being 12 and tap into hope and the joy of that time, and enjoy middle grade. So I agree. I think it's middle grades for everyone.
Yeah, I completely agree. Pivoting topics a little bit, what is your favorite part of the writing process, from just coming up with the idea to character creation to publication?
I really enjoy two parts. I enjoy the part of character development. Usually when I get about 10,000, 15,000 words into a book, I start to really know my characters. In the beginning, you're writing about these strangers, you don't really know them. You have sort of a rough idea about who they are, who they might want to be, their motivations, why they do what they do. You're just sort of fumbling around in the dark. And then you hit this sort of sweet spot when you start to know them and you start to know, oh, I know what Claire is going to do in this situation. Oh, Billy would definitely not do that. He would do this instead. And you really get to be inside of their heads, and you get to really understand why they're on this journey that they're on. That's a magic part. That's one of the magic parts for me. When you turn that corner from the characters being strangers to the characters being friends. And by the end, they're my family. They are my children. They are part of my life. I dream about them. You get to know them really well. So I think that's really a magical spot. I also, in terms of like the whole process, I hate coming up with ideas. Some authors, they have like a notebook of 6,000 books they want to write. And I'm like, oh, I don't, what am I going to do next? Although I do have 4 books going right now. I started 4 different books. So that's like a first for me. But the drafting is tiring for me. I get through the drafting. So the idea, I get through the drafting, and then I get to editing. And that is my favorite part. I love taking this mess that I've made that's sort of like, ugh, and then I shape it and craft it and fix it. And I take parts and I put it back together. And I love the editing part. I love the editing process. I don't love it if it goes on endlessly, which
Yeah.
I sometimes do. But I do like when I get in there and really fix it at a, not only just the structural level, the pacing, the plotting, but also just at the line level, making sure that I've put enough details in, I've put enough layering my senses in, that I have a good conversation going on between the characters. I like that part. That's my favorite part of the writing.
That's so cool. I tend to ask this question to every author I interview, and it's so fun seeing how every single person has a completely different favorite part of the process. I
Yep.
find that character creation and character development is always kind of up there, but that editing, I don't think I've heard that one. It's so fun to like hear all the different perspectives.
My favorite part. I could edit. I will edit until the cows come home. I will edit people like enough. You're done editing. It is what it is. It's good enough. I will edit and edit, but the drafting, the drafting. I just get through it. I just get through it.
When I'm writing and I've like it's like you're saying, it's like there's like a scene and it's a mess, and then you edit it and you fix it. It's so satisfying. It's like it's
Yeah.
nice.
Yes. It's magic. It's
Yeah.
very satisfying. It's the magic. Yeah. When a sentence really comes together and you're like, yes, I can write.
Yeah. And then you're like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, that's a good sentence."
That's a good sentence. Yeah.
How did you know that you wanted to become a writer?
I don't know. Like I always wrote as a kid. And I did a ton of journaling. I journaled and journaled and journaled. I would like go out for hikes in the woods and take my spiral notebook and like write poetry and do all of the things. Um, and I wrote a short story in seventh grade that won a big award in my county. And I was like, oh, look, winning this big writing award. And then I stopped writing for fiction. I worked on the school newspaper for many years. And I didn't do a lot of creative writing all through high school and college. And I put it away for a while, but it was just sort of always eating at me in the back of my head. I had all these stories that I wanted to work on. And and finally I decided that I was going to try and do it. And a long time later, here I am doing it. So
It's worked out pretty well.
it worked out pretty well. Yeah.
What did you go to college for if you didn't go for writing?
I have a major in psychology and I minored in early childhood education. So I was a teacher. This is sort of my Billy thing. I really wanted to major in English. I wanted to do creative writing, and I had a lot of people telling me that that was never going to pay the bills and I was going to starve. And they were right. And they honestly were right. That they said I needed to have a skill that was. So I went into education because I loved kids and I love teaching. I still love teaching. It's one of my favorite things. So that worked out too. But yeah, that's what I went to school for. And psychology, I love psychology, and you have all these. If I had my life to go back, if I in a parallel universe, if I explored that and went down that path, I know I would have loved that too, because I feel like I use a lot of psychology in my books to sort of like what is this kid gonna do in this situation, like behaviorally and psychologically. How does this feed into the behavior of a person? So I feel like I still use it.
That honestly makes sense on why then one you would write middle grade and young adult and for kids. And then two, why you would love the character creation, character development process and finding out what your characters are going to do, because I think that goes hand in hand on psychologically what they would do and stuff like that.
Yep. And dealing with their trauma. That's
Yeah.
again, it all ties together. You just are who you are. Yeah.
This interview is very full circle. And since it's become full circle, I think that this is a perfect moment because that's our last question. Thank you so much, Amalia, for joining me on the author interrogations today. And listeners, thank you so much for listening. You can find Amalia's newest book, Team Canteen, on shelves September 3rd. Or you can make it even easier for yourself and pre-order it now. You can find all other author interrogations episodes with authors such as Tom Phillips, Janet Sumner Johnson, and Adam Rosenbaum on YouTube and Spotify. Just search the author interrogations. And you can even find a special editor interrogation with the incredible editor Allison Weiss. You can follow me on Instagram and Goodreads at BOOKSTROVERT Reviews and Twitter at BOOKSTROVERT or you can visit my website, bookstrovertreviews.com, which is a compilation of all my reviews, all my social media, and all author interrogations episodes. And then, Amalia, where can listeners find you?
You can find me at amaliajahn.com. I'm just Amalie Jahn on Twitter and Facebook. I think I'm amalia.john.official on Instagram. And I have depending on when readers are listening to this podcast, I have a pre-order campaign going on right now. It's linked on all of my socials. If you pre-order the book right now from Park Road Books, from anywhere in the world, they ship internationally. You will get bookmarks, you will get stickers, you will get your own magic boa. So be sure to pre-order the book. And thank you so much for having me on. I'm so grateful that there are people in the world out there helping to spread the word about middle grade books and books in general. And I'm really grateful that you had me on.
Of course, this was such an amazing interview. Thank you so much, and thank you, listeners, for listening.